Hi everybody and welcome to Video Journalism, Week 5, Sourcing and Pitching News. So today a bit of housekeeping, but our basic learning objectives are pitching news, what type of news sources there are, how you write for broadcast, how you speak as you write, keeping it simple, using the active voice and the type of story formats for video journalism. So just before we go through, want you to have a quick look at the course contents again. So this lecture basically just drives what you need to learn. So if you look at the unit content, study guides, week 5, researching, writing, shortlisting the news. Okay, there's a bit of a topic overview on the objectives. Lots of good stuff to keep you going, okay? And we're talking a lot about sourcing news at the moment. So the source of news, where we collect our news from. Now, there's a few little things that we can talk about. And just for my, basically what I used to do. So I used to work for Channel 7 in Lismore. And we would go in the morning and there'd be a whole heap of media releases to follow. And we'd choose which stories we're going to use for the day. We'd pick 3 stories, and we also had a police scanner there for emergency stories as well, so we knew what the police were up to. And basically, we would produce 3 stories in one day. So we'd go through them all, pick the best 3, go out and film interviews, put stories together, edit them, and send them down to Tamworth for broadcast that night. So that's what we used to do for broadcast news. Now, it works differently in different newsrooms, and for your sake, one of the best things to do is to build a network of contacts, people that can provide news sources for you. And one of those sources at Southern Cross University is the new Chief Marketing Officer, Dean Gould. So if you haven't thought about a story just yet, get hold of me and I'll make sure that we get hold of Dean Gould and we can get some stories to write about the university in the interim. And that's an excellent starting point for you in building your source list. Now, in my day, we used to have a little book that we'd keep all our sources in, contact details, who they were, so police, media, council officers, your local representatives in state and federal parliament, even the journalists of the newspaper, teachers, doctors, anybody that can provide a story for you. And then what you would do is you turn up in the morning, and if there wasn't anything decent in the media releases that had been sent through that day, you would pitch a story for production. So that's one of the things that you need to learn how to do in this course. So when you're pitching a news story, write one paragraph which summarizes your idea. Highlight the newsworthy or the news values that are related to making your story newsworthy. Tell us where you source your story from, and we just talked about our contact lists, and we go into a little bit more detail on the next slide. One of the things we'd like to make sure, and the difference between news stories and public relations, is that whether it's balanced and ethical. So the difference between a PR practitioner and a journalist is that we balance stories. So we look at 2 sides of the argument, or balance it might not be 2 opposing arguments, but we balance the story. It's not just a biased one point of view. And we also want to be ethical. So when you pitch your story, we also want to know who you're interviewing, what questions you're going to ask, and you really need to know what footage you need to film. Now, we talked a lot about how we're using the camera to visually tell a story, and you would have done a lot of that in your assessment item, your first one. So you should understand the processes of what sort of footage you need to add to your story. And then what are the building blocks? And again, you would have gone through that in your assessment items. A piece of the camera, voiceovers, vox pops, and interviews. So there's lots of places where you get news sources from. There's official proceedings, like I said, media releases, day files, diary of events, RSS feeds that you get from the internet, wire services, newspapers, for instance. APP have a whole list of things that they send through. We keep talking about media releases. They are very important because that's basically people letting you know what's going on. Um, Expert publications on radio, TV, newspapers, news conferences, stakeouts, emergency services. As I mentioned before, we used to have a police scanner, but you find out what's going on through the media centres now rather than police scanners. And I can never overestimate how important your contacts list is, because that's where you get your tip-offs. Now you can go through social media or advertising, and a really good place for students is the notice boards. So when you write for broadcast, you need to be heard, so it's not read. So try to be conversational in the way you write for broadcast. Be to the point, because the audience just wants to know what they need to know. They don't want to listen to any fluff. So before you go out and read things, read your stories out loud and ensure they're easily said. Keep it short and simple, but rather than however, and remove that. Okay, we need contractions. So rather than she is, we'll say she's, just because we need to make it more conversational. It's really important to be active in the way that you speak. So you need an active voice. Now, it's always the subject doing something to the object. Okay, for instance, in the first line there, the subject is the journalist. The verb or the doing word is they record the interview. So the way we do it is just to make sure we're not overstating what we're trying to say, and we're not using more words than we need to use. So we can use exceptions in court, for instance, or if there's more interesting things going on. So we always want to be in the present, so we want to use present tense because it's always happening now. Now, attribution is completely different to news. So if you've been writing for a newspaper or online, you usually attribute at the end. But in TV broadcast, the attribution comes first. So when you're attributing Mayor Susan Black, she comes at the start. Okay, she says, not said Miss Mayor Susan Black. So there's a big difference there. When you write numbers, write exactly what you mean to say. For example, F111 is F111. 0 is 0. $24.70, $24.70. $4 million is $4 million. And 35%. So just read them all out nice and clearly so you can't get confused there. The type of story formats that we have in broadcast is the live read, and there's lots of stuff here all about these story formats in the reading material for you, so you can go into more detail, and more importantly in the reading by Barbara Allison. So I'm hoping that you're all doing the readings, because I can't just explain these to you clearly. You need to do the reading so you get an in-depth analysis of what a live read is. An intro with a soundbite, a live voiceover, live cross, a voicer, and a package, which is basically what we're doing, which is an intro, a narration, an interview, images and sound, and a piece to camera. So I'm hoping that you have been doing the readings, because that'll give you a really good basis on how all these story formats are. And when you go and work in the broadcast industry, you will have to do all these things. You'll need to do a live read. The anchor will do the intro with a soundbite. You'll be doing live crossovers, and you will also be doing lots of packages. So get in there, do your readings. There's plenty of good readings there. As I mentioned, there we go, sources of news. There's discussion topics as well, so please get online and share with your friends, because it's the only opportunity you get as online students to really engage with other students. Do the readings, do the learning activities, watch these videos. Here we go, constructing the story. Lots more good videos by Mark Willesee as well. And the discussion board. So just get on the discussion board, post on there if you have any questions about all these. Please do the readings first and then share the discussions. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.